tungsten is a defense metal. The U.S. currently has no domestic mine production of tungsten. There are no active tungsten mines across the U.S. And on top of that, China controls more than 80% of total global supply of tungsten. China actually announced a full-out export ban on all tungsten and all tungsten intermediate products. We own two very important tungsten deposits and projects in the United States of America. And we believe that we can get both of these projects into commercial production before the current Trump administration leaves office.
Today's guest is a supporting sponsor of Liberty in Finance. Welcome back to Liberty in Finance. We're delighted to have this returning guest. Oliver Friesen is the CEO of Guardian Metal Resources. He joins us this Thursday, July 24th, 2025. Oliver, thank you for coming back on Liberty in Finance.
Thanks for having me. Great to speak again.
We introduced you to our audience a few times last year. You, as the CEO of Guardian Metal Resources, have alerted us to the importance of a critical metal, especially critical for defense purposes, tungsten, its unique properties that make it so needed for that purpose. And you also whetted our appetite for the potential of something that has come to fruition now, which is an award from the Department of Defense and the Trump administration. We'd love to hear more about that, as well as the tungsten market, why tungsten is so vital to the U.S., and why investors should be well aware of companies like Guardian Metal Resources that are making this possible, and what makes Guardian Metal Resources unique in this space. So let's start out with your big new news flash that just came out yesterday, and let our viewers and subscribers know something that you were awaiting and hoping for quite some time, and how it has come to be.
Yeah, of course. Well, great intro there, done again. It's great to speak again. First and foremost, I'd like to extend a huge, amount of gratitude and thanks to, first of all, the United States Department of Defense, as well as the Trump administration for allowing this award to happen, which is obviously essential for the domestic critical production of tungsten. So huge thanks is very much needed there. But as you pointed out, very exciting development for the company, something that we've been working on for quite some time. And I think really it's a validation as to our business model and what we're doing with this company. So we've established ourselves, we believe, as the leader in U.S. focused tungsten exploration development. And this sort of stamp of approval as to what we're doing is really important as we push towards our mission and objective of delivering mined tungsten supply to the U.S. market.
We've talked with a number of companies about critical resources that, for the longest time, the last decade at least, and probably about the last 5 decades, there's been a push that smarter, faster companies we're going to use a global supply chain, going to go do everything where it could be done the easiest or at the lowest cost, and count on the prevalence of an ever-present global supply chain to make sure that all of those critical materials ended up where they needed to be. And we had our eyes rudely awakened over the past 4 or 5 years to find out that long global supply chains are and can be not only fragile due to logistical reasons, but also politically vulnerable, and it can leave countries at a loss or at a lack of materials that they absolutely need to have for their well-being. Tungsten is one of those materials. Can you give us a quick recap of why tungsten should be considered and is considered a critical material for many countries, not the least of which is the United States of America?
Yeah, of course. No, you nailed it there. I mean, tungsten is in our view, one of the most critical metals right now, and there's multiple reasons for it. Number one, you alluded to the fact that tungsten is a defense metal. It is a metal that is needed in the production of munitions, armor-piercing munitions for the defense industry. On top of that, given its very unique physical properties, so it's one of the most dense metal on the planet, as well as having one of the highest melting points. It's also used in the flip side in armors. So tanks, personal armors require a substantial amount of tungsten. So for the award applications, your listeners can probably very quickly pick up that it's a very essential metal right now, given the current geopolitical climate. And the reason why, what we're doing at Guardian is so important is the fact that the U.S. currently has no domestic mine production of tungsten. There are no active tungsten mines across the U.S. And on top of that, China controls more than 80% of total global supply of tungsten, which is a not a good position to be in right now, as you can imagine. And what we've seen recently, as of February 4th of this year, was China actually announced a full-out export ban on all tungsten and all tungsten intermediate products. So what that means is that over the last 5 months, no tungsten, an 80% global supplier and miner, no tungsten has left Chinese, the Chinese country in that period of time. So what we're seeing now is, outside of defense, which is a very important application for tungsten, given the properties that I discussed, it's a very important input metal into a wide array of different manufacturing companies and sectors, including drill bits. So it's very, very wear-resistant materials. So the likes of Schlumberger, Baker Hughes require tungsten to produce drill bits that are needed to drill oil wells in the United States of America. It's also used in aerospace. So it's used in, Boeing will use it in airplanes and as defense, as I pointed out. There's a long list of different use cases. I mean, it's needed in cutting tools for vehicles, for solar, for wind, quantum computing, chip technology, you name it. And right now, the U.S. has no mine supply, and up until February 4th was reliant on China for their tungsten imports. And so where we're at now is that the market, as you can imagine, when the 80% global producer shuts the taps off effectively, what we're seeing now, and very similar to antimony, which this happened to about 1.5 years ago, is the price is moving up. And what we're seeing is, there's manufacturers who are saying, we don't know where our tungsten is going to come from over the next few months. And if we don't get our hands on it, we're going to have to shut down, right? And what a position to be in when major manufacturers are saying, we need this material and we can't find it, right? And also on top of that, once again, the defense angle is the most important driver right now is the need to produce munitions and tank armors and a wide array of other use cases for the defense space. So what we're looking to do here is obviously the timing of this award is very important, to have the United States Department of Defense provide an award allows us to go quicker. Because at Guardian Metal Resources and also with our U.S. operating subsidiary in Nevada, we own 2 very important tungsten deposits and projects in the United States of America. And we believe that we can get both of these projects into commercial production before the current Trump administration leaves office. So we can deliver a meaningful amount of material, we believe, to the U.S. market, which would be able to be distributed across the wide array of different manufacturing supply chains that require this very, very critical input metal.
The Trump administration has hit the ground running. I mean, in the first half year since the start of his term, his administration has identified a wide array of strategic materials, critical materials, and some rather provocative strategies for how to bring those to under American control. Tungsten is one of those, and to be able to exploit domestically available supplies and make those productive for the use and availability of American critical industries, not only for defense, but as you mentioned, for energy production as well, are going to be remaining in complete alignment with the major goals of the current administration and the critical needs of our country. So the role that Guardian Metal Resources can play in this market, can you talk to us a little bit about the market itself, the tungsten market in general? You did touch on the concentration of control over the supply in the hands of the Chinese. What kind of resources are in the United States that you have access to, and what would be the plan from Guardian Metal Resources standpoint on how to make those productive quickly?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's a very important point. And as you mentioned, across the industrial base, the U.S. government is looking to effectively reshore the mine supply of a lot of key input metals, and specifically for the defense industry. So a few that come to mind, and I'm sure your listeners are well aware, is rare earth and rare earth magnets. We've seen a substantial award provided from the United States Department of Defense through their DPA-3 program, which is the same program that we've received the award for our project. So MP has sort of become the U.S. champion for reshoring and bringing back mine supply and processing of rare earth and rare earth magnets. We've also seen awards provided to the likes of Perpetual Resources. Really, they're seen as the U.S. champion for antimony. Antimony being another key critical defense metal for the production of munitions. And up until now, there was no U.S. awards that were given to any U.S. tungsten operating or developing companies. So, I'm very proud to say and very excited to say that we are the first U.S. company to receive Department of Defense funding for domestic tungsten. So I think that really highlights the position that we're in here. We see ourselves as the leader. We want to be the champion of U.S. tungsten, which is a very exciting position to be in, given what we've seen the other champions across different metals achieve in this market. So, just in kind of taking this another step, and the other reason why I think tungsten is so important, and your listeners should be well aware of it, is the fact that, the mine supply is half the battle. The other thing that the U.S. is looking to really bolster and support is the processing, right? Because if you can mine the metal here in the U.S., but you don't actually have the capacity to process it, it sort of defeats the purpose of a Mines in America supply. But the unique thing about tungsten is the fact that the processing capacity exists on U.S. soil. So we have an LOI agreement with LOI offtake agreement with a company called Global Tungsten and Powders, which own the largest tungsten processing plant outside of China. So that plant is in Towanda, Pennsylvania. And right now, if you look at the supply chain of tungsten in the United States of America, the only thing that's missing is the mine supply. There are no active mines. So once again, that's what we're looking to do here. Just to answer the second part of your question, we have the largest undeveloped tungsten deposit in the U.S., and we also own what was formerly the largest tungsten mine in the U.S. as well in the 1980s. So the thing to note is the U.S. has mined tungsten before. For decades and decades, tungsten has been mined on U.S. soil and from both of our projects. But right now we're in this position where all of the mining capacity has been pushed offshore to countries like China and Russia. And that is not a position that is palatable. And we can't be in that position any longer, which is why we're now seeing the likes of the United States Department of Defense get behind and provide funding and awards to companies who are looking to mine these metals on American soil. So, we are looking to push these projects forward. And it's a very important position that we occupy right now, because in the absence of a mine supply of tungsten in the United States of America, the U.S. remains reliant on foreign adversaries and other foreign sources for the metal. But if you can mine it in the USA, that's the best place to do it. So we're pushing forward. We're very excited about the award, obviously, and we have a very important mission ahead of us.
This sounds like an absolute ideal setup for a company that's needed by a country that needs it. And if the material's available and all the other infrastructure is already in place and proven to make that accessible and make it useful, and then what's needed is reactivating the mining capacity, and Guardian Metal Resources sounds like it stands poised to make that happen. You talked to us very briefly at the beginning of this interview about the tungsten market in general. Our viewers are very keen on markets that they've seen waken up, like the platinum market just this year. We've seen nickel, we've seen copper, other materials, and how important they can be and how the market can respond when the above ground supplies of them become short or in the wrong places, and they need to be made sure that they're available to the parties that need them. Can you talk to us about the current state of the tungsten market and how it has been responding to this shifting geopolitical situation and availability of this critical material?
Yeah, it's a very exciting time in the tungsten market right now. It's probably the most exciting it's ever been. And the obvious sort of real thing that's changed recently is when China announced a full-out export ban. So when an 80% global supplier shuts the borders down and says no tungsten can leave, as you can imagine, that creates a lot of tightness in the market. And this is the exact same thing, as I mentioned, that happened in antimony about a year and a half ago. And what we've seen on the back of that, because that's a story that's played out for longer, is the price of antimony was originally at about $10,000 a ton. Right now, roughly a year and a half out from that export ban, antimony is now roughly $60,000 a ton. So it's gone up around 5 to 6x, which is, for a commodity, is a substantial move in that period of time. Now, tungsten, the export ban came into effect February 4th from China. So we're very, very, we're in the second inning sort of this ball game here. And what we've seen is the price of tungsten effectively has gone from $30,000 a ton to right now it's at about $47,000 a ton. So it's only gone up about, just over 50%, whereas antimony has gone up 6x over a longer period of time. So we don't know where the tungsten price is ultimately going to go. What I can say is, in the absence of a new mine supply, the market remains incredibly tight and incredibly short of supply. The other thing, just to add to all this, is the fact that, as we discussed, there's a significant defense military application here for the production of munitions and tank armors and a lot of other defense-specific purposes. And as I'm sure your listeners are aware of, defense budgets in the United States of America, but also across NATO and the EU and globally, in Russia and China as well, defense budgets are moving up. So what that means is there's more money to actually go and rebuild stockpiles and rebuild the munitions capacity that these countries need to sort of position themselves at a point of strength. So we're seeing defense consumption increase dramatically year over year, as you can imagine, because all these budgets are going up and that money is being deployed into restarting manufacturing capacity. And therefore, you need the key input metals, antimony, tungsten, rare earths, you name it. So we're seeing a lot of competing factors here, but really the data points all point to an incredibly exciting time in the tungsten space. And on top of that, the other kind of key factor is, if you look at the other global suppliers and miners of tungsten, in the top 5, you also have Russia and North Korea. So between China, Russia, and North Korea, you're pushing up to 90%, which means that there's only about 10% of supply that comes from, friendly countries. And so that 10% has a lot of different, mouths to feed effectively, given we all still need the same amount of tungsten. If anything, the tungsten demand is increasing dramatically. And the final point, just to add another layer on top of all this, is the stockpiling. We've seen in the United States of America, the Defense Logistics Agency has received funding from the Big Beautiful Bill to go and now restockpile tungsten. Same thing over in Europe. We're seeing that money is being allocated to stockpile these critical metals. So these countries have a safe, secure supply of these metals 4 times when they need it, which is effectively right now. So very, very reduced supply coming out of China. There's no new mines coming online or no new major mines coming online. Then you have increased consumption across the industrial base and the defense space. And on top of that, you have stockpiling. So you can just imagine how tight the market is. And then on top of that, your drill bit manufacturers and you have your automakers and your aerospace companies who all need, and those numbers are growing as well annually. So once again, what this all points to, Dunnigan, is an incredibly, incredibly tight market in the United States of America, and the need for a company like Guardian to be a champion and deliver Mines in America tungsten to the industrial base.
In addition to the need for this material and the need for a completely mature supply chain, from the in-ground resource to the ability to get it out, the ability to process it and deliver it to the local strategic companies that need it, there's also the question of, and this is one thing that Rick Rule often reminds us, is the capability, the proven track record of the companies and their balance sheets to carry out this mission. Just because it needs to happen doesn't mean that the right players are ready to do it. Can you talk to us briefly about there's recently been some strengthening of the balance sheet, I understand, at Guardian Metal Resources, and how the company is positioning itself and prepared financially from a balance sheet strength standpoint and a planning standpoint to be able to be an effective and critical player at this time.
Yeah, of course. So, like I said, the key mission for us is to get to commercial production on U.S. soil as quickly as we can. And really what allows companies like ours to go quick is having, as you mentioned, the balance sheet strength, because then you can have two drill rigs running instead of one. And that means you can get twice the data. So I'm really happy you asked that, because concurrent to or shortly after the announcement from the Department of Defense on the award that we've received, which is for $6.2 million US dollars, we completed a concurrent financing predominantly with existing holders of the company for a total of $21 million US dollars. So between those two, that accounts for $27.2 million of capital that we can now plow into these projects and push them forward even quicker. Now that's on top of the existing cash reserves that we had before yesterday. So yesterday was without a doubt the most exciting day in the company's history. Now we have, around 30 million US dollars, partially from the Department of Defense award and the rest in cash reserves, to now move these projects forward even faster. So that's a really important development. So we are cashed up. We are moving quickly. We have another rig secured. We are beefing up the team. So we have put together a team who can run both of these projects in parallel, and also a team who have built mines in Nevada in the last 10 years. So we are ready to move these projects forward and deliver on our mission to the U.S.
It was great seeing representatives from Guardian Metal Resources at the Rural Symposium on Natural Resource Investing in Boca Raton, Florida. That's where we met, actually. And that's how we introduced you to our audience before. And this is an important point for us, is that Rick Rule continues to be a recurring, regular guest on our channel every month, educating us about what to look for in the natural resource space, how to understand the direction that things are heading, and how especially to position yourselves ahead of the crowd, so that by the time the mass market recognizes the value that was already latent there, that was already present, that he saw ahead of other investors, to follow his lead and to position ourselves correctly. So for our audience, all of our viewers and subscribers who are potentially wanting to find out more about Guardian Metal Resources, we'll certainly put a link to the corporate website in the description of this video. And is there any other tips that you can give us to quickly, just as you're moving quickly to get the resource available, what we can do to move quickly as potential investors to learn more about Guardian Metal Resources?
Yeah, of course. Definitely go to our website. That would be the best place to start, guardianmetalresources.com. We're also very active on Twitter. So just search in Guardian Metal Resources. You can find my personal Twitter as well. We're very active. We're getting this story out. I think, as you mentioned, Don, again, and one of the Rick Rule's principles is trying to be early to the story. Now, this is probably one of the first times your listeners have heard tungsten. If they've heard our interviews before, they would have started to hear about it then, but it's still early innings. Like I said, the Chinese export ban only came into effect about 5 months ago, and people are now starting to wake up because the price is moving, and major manufacturers are saying, if we can't get this important material, we're going to have to shut down. So we've positioned ourselves ahead of the curve. We acquired the largest tungsten deposit in the U.S. almost 5 years ago. We've now secured United States Department of Defense funding to help push this project forward at pace. So we're in a really, really strong position. We view ourselves as the leader in U.S. tungsten exploration and development. And as I mentioned, we are the only U.S. DoD recipient of an award for tungsten. So I think, once again, that really signifies the position that we're in here. So I encourage listeners to go to our website, go to our Twitter, reach out to me directly. The great thing is we are actually it just so happened to be a UK-based company, our parent company, with our US operating company in Nevada. But we are moving now our operations and our team, and we're really pushing over back to America, where we believe this story really belongs. So we have an OTC listing right now on the OTCQX. You can find this GMTLF. And part of our mission going forward here, especially with the increased cash reserves, is to achieve a senior U.S. listing. So we're pushing forward towards that goal as quickly as we can, because that is the market where we believe our story and the importance of what we're doing will be best recognized. So definitely keep an eye open for that. But right now, we do have a U.S. OTC listing. And as the company evolves and pushes towards our goal, we're going to continue to Americanize and really focus our efforts on getting the story across to American investors, because in our view, the American investors really understand the importance of stories like Guardian Metal Resources and how important these metals are for U.S. national security.
This is, as we mentioned in the beginning, this is your, I believe, at least your third time on Liberty and Finance. We've been bringing you here for about 2 years, and we want to make sure to keep our viewers and subscribers apprised of the important progress that you're making and that Guardian Metal Resources is making. And we just thank you, Oliver Friesen, CEO of Guardian Metal Resources, for joining us this one more time on Liberty and Finance.
Thank you so much, Dunnigan. I'm sure we'll chat again soon, given everything that's going on across the business.